Good morning. Welcome to Greenspring Montessori School's The Montessori Child. Today, we're going to talk about supporting your child's emotional resiliency, self-compassion, and strong sense of themselves. My name is Tamara Sheesley Balis, and I have the privilege of serving as head of school here at Greenspring Montessori School. And I wear both an administrator hat and a parent hat as a Montessorian. Looking forward to working with you today. The truth is that our work as parents is really challenging. And one of the things I know, even personally, I'm always reading parenting books. I'm really motivated to do that because I bring them to the school. But then actually implementing it still is work, right? It still requires that level of really surrendering to what needs to be and kind of letting go of the ego and all of those pieces. And what I know is I get really jazzed as I read or I'm presenting, and then it is part of what I have to do is keep that alive, right? And the way that I keep it alive is I continually go back and I listen to podcasts and to TED Talks and, read books. But I just want to offer that we're gonna have so much in today's conversation, and a lot of it's new for us. I want you to know, like we're growing and learning too, and so we can be learning together. And it takes that kind of going back and continually building that part of the brain. We can't, it's not a one-shot deal, as we well know. And you all who have been at all of these things are in that conversation clearly. So. And perfection is not our goal, right? But really building resilient, compassionate children who know who they are and can really advocate for themselves and others is our goal. And so anyway, so that's what we're doing today. What are the impediments to our child's growing confidence? And we're going to go through this part really fast, because these are things that we are navigating as parents. And so this is just for us to have awareness about. So the importance of sleep, right? I just like to throw these up so that people can really be aware of how long children really need sleep. Many of you are in the 1 to 3 years old. They need 12 to 14 hours. Now that includes their naps, right? That's a long time. This is the American Association for Pediatrics put this out years ago, and I got it off of About Kids Health. But it's something to think about, because what's happened with electricity and with electronics is most children are not getting enough sleep, and they don't have the capacity to really be able to identify that. We keep them up because we want to spend time with them. And oftentimes, like to Margaret's point about the witching hour, if you really look at the child, if they're going into they kind of get tired and then they get revamped up, that they're up too long. They've been up too long. That time when their energy starts to dip is showing us that they actually need that. That's when they should be starting to rest. And oftentimes, I find that parents are not putting the children to bed really early enough. When the children were young, we're talking about getting ready for bed at 6:30 and really a 7 o'clock bedtime. So it's really something to think about as you're navigating, because if your child is highly emotional, that can be one of the pieces at play. I highly recommend the book for every parent, Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. I am sorry I don't have that as listed as a resource, but maybe you can throw that in the chat. That'd be great. Also, let's talk about diet. I know food is so personal for people and it can feel like such a threat, but one of the things to really pay attention to is, what is your child putting in their body? One of the things to really pay attention to is particularly foods. There's a lot of foods like chips and soda we know are not good for us, right? That's one thing. Then there's the foods that are packaged to be healthy that really are not healthy, right? And what are those doing to our child? I know if I eat, for example, a bagel in the morning, I don't actually have any energy in the day because that, it increases the insulin. There's no fruit, there's no healthy, there's nothing in there for my body to grab onto. So starting to really take a look at what are we really putting in our children's bodies? One of the things that I notice often happens is parents will go, we'll be at an event and the parents are not eating the sweets, but the children are eating the sweets. So we bring the sweets, which I know I'm going to get on my soapbox for 1 second here. Like I'm not on my soapbox the whole time, right? And say that when they're having sugar it does set off the brain. It makes it hard to have sugar control in your body. It makes our moods go up and down. And it's a lot to ask them. They don't have a fully developed frontal cortex. And so we're asking them to manage really kind of this unlimited amount of sweets that they can have. And so it's just something to think about as you're navigating this conversation. This is not on nutrition, but I can't step over that. Okay. All right. Missing a connection to nature. One of the things that in many cultures like Japan does nature bathing. If a child is really struggling, they get them out into nature. There are a lot of studies coming out about the significant reduction in ADHD tendencies in children who spend a great deal of time in nature. And oftentimes our children are not getting outside nearly enough. And I know even with my own girls, my girls are readers. That's what they'd love to do with all their time. I have to use a crowbar to get them outside. And I'm like, you are welcome to read. You just please go do it outside, right? I'm not even asking them to run around, and I'm not even going to harp on exercise because that's a whole nother piece. But it used to be, you all know, I ran around the neighborhood all day outside on my bike. And our children, at least my children, don't have access to that in the same way. So I have to be really intentional about it. We also have to navigate the impacts of media culture, right? So children are spending, this is average American child is 3 hours a day on watching TV. This is a pre-COVID statistic, by the way, right? I don't even want to know what's happened to these numbers with COVID. I can tell you that we have, we have meetings with parents, and we're finding out that children, they really had to use screens as babysitters. And there is 100% an impact on the brain that has been researched and demonstrated from having significant exposure, plus the fact that then somebody else is getting to really form how they think, right? And form it, and oftentimes market to them. So I just want to, I wanted to address that as well. The other piece of it is not just them being on electronics, but it's us being on electronics as parents, right? And are we really available to them? And how often are we, in our house, we don't sleep with our phones. We they're far away. We also don't carry them around on the weekends. And we don't have them at meals. We never answer the phone when it rings in a meal or a text, but really having to be intentional about that, because I work way too much. And part of that is because I can work from home with my laptop and my phone, whereas it used to be you go home and you're done for the day, right? So my girls are really good about saying, I'm here now, Mom. Will you, it's Saturday morning. Will you close your computer? Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Can I just finish this email? Yes, I will. Right. So, but really, what's the distraction level for us and us being present? And then I really want to speak to this, and I'm going to have to look at the notes on my slide over here on this other computer. So forgive me, but it's really important to share that our teens are really navigating the rate. Okay, so first of all, as soon as a child gets a smartphone, their rate of depression and anxiety goes up to over 50%. Literally, it increases astronomically through that exposure. And one of the things we should know is, like, as we're looking at what we want for our children, is that during adolescence, and it's younger and younger, you know, my 11-year-old has started advocating for her getting a phone. And I'm like, and my 14-year-old got it. My 16-year-old got it when she went to high school. She didn't have one. She's the only one in any of her classes. And the teacher said, please take a picture of this on your phone, do this on your phone, do this on your phone. And we felt like we were at a disadvantage. But I will tell you that what we've ended up doing, and she's 16, is we actually have screen time passwords on them, because it's not fair to ask them to navigate that level of responsibility. It is addictive. It is designed to be addictive. There's an incredible amount of information out there on how something just came out about how Facebook knew that Instagram would have a negative impact and be toxic. This is internal documents on teenage girls before they put it out, and they did it anyway. So it is known to be. So I just want you to know kind of what we're up against as parents. Fewer teens now are less likely to hang out, date, or even learn to drive, right, than they were. When I turned 16, I was like in the car, like I was ready to go, right? I have a 16-year-old. She's got a provisional. Maybe, you know, like there's not, for some reason, there's not that same drive. And their fewer teens are working, and their overall teens are getting less sleep. So it's really like we have to be so conscious. So the good news is that your child has a magnificent brain. And the more we really start to understand the brain, the easier it is to actually support our children and help them to grow and learn and really operate in a way that really works for all of us in the family. And so today we'd like to share with you the information by Payne Bryson and Dr. Daniel Siegel. They are, I just really want to give credit where credit is due. They wrote The Whole Brain Child, and they also wrote No Drama Discipline, which we use as really a framework for our discipline in our school community. And so I want to make sure that we give a shout out to them, because this is really groundbreaking work. And I want you to know that of course, I'm not an expert in neuroscience. I'm sharing with you straight from The Whole Brain Child today. So let's start by talking about how the brain wires and rewires, and how really what fires together in the brain really wires together. So there's quite a bit of new research in the field of neuroplasticity, which supports the perspective that parents can directly shape the unfolding growth of their child's brain according to what experiences we as parents are offering our children. So one example is that hours of screen time, so playing video games, watching television, texting, will wire the brain together in certain ways. And then educational activities and sports and music wire the brain in other ways. The other thing is that social connections, so spending time with family and friends and learning about relationships, especially face-to-face interactions, will wire the brain in yet other ways. So everything that we are putting in front of our children is actually impacting the way that their brain is wiring and the way that the brain is connecting from one hemisphere to another, and the upper brain and the lower brain. And really that's our responsibility, right? It's the prepared environment. It's what we're offering. It's the environment we're creating that is really supporting how the brain integrates. So everything that happens to us affects the way that the brain develops. And we want to make sure that what we do for each of our children is really helping their brain become more integrated, so that they have the opportunity to use their mental resources to the full capacity. One of the things that we know about children is when they are dysregulated, which is another way of saying really not able to manage themselves well, or manage themselves in a way that may work in that moment, it tends to be that their brain is not integrating. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the right and left hemispheres of the brain, and really the lower regions of the brain and the upper regions of the brain, and how they all work together to really, when we can help the child integrate those parts of the brain, what a difference it really makes for them in their ability to operate in a way that is regulated and in a way that really works for the family. And we'll start with the right and left brain, because are these new ideas for you all? This was all new to me when I read this book. Is this new for you all?
Very new, very interesting.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So your left brain loves and desires order, right? It talked about that. It's logical, literal, linguistic. It likes words, and it's linear. It likes to put things in order. And the right brain is holistic and nonverbal, sending and receiving signals and allow us to communicate with each other. Our right brain cares about the big picture, the meaning and feel of an experience, and specializes really in emotions and personal memories. And so when a child is having a meltdown, right, they are very much caught in their right brain. And one of the things she goes over very quickly in here, oh, well, no, I have a slide on that in a bit. So just getting clear. Then we have the horizontal integration, which is upstairs and downstairs. One of the things that one of our guides did that I really liked was she taught her children how to say, she taught them about the lower part of the brain and the higher part of the brain. And she taught them to, this part of the brain is I believe the amygdala. And she would say, if you feel like you're getting frustrated, you can say, I'm about to flip my lid, which means that there's no longer integrated. I think, Margaret, you can describe this better than I can, but it's no longer integrated. The brain is no longer integrated, and I'm about to move only into the base part of the brain, right? Because really we're looking at the brain as a house with an upstairs and a downstairs. And the downstairs brain includes the brainstem and the limbic region, right? Which is what we're talking about, which are located in the lower part. And that's really from your neck up to your nose. And then these lower parts are more primitive because they're responsible for basic functions, which we need. We need breathing and blinking, but they also do fight or flight. And as soon as we move, our child is just down in fight or flight. They don't have any access to the upper part of the brain, which is the cerebral cortex and its various parts. And our younger children haven't developed that part of the brain. And here's what's interesting. Even when your children, the younger children don't actually have it well developed. They do develop it more. There's more in elementary. Have more capacity. When they go into their teenage years, it becomes mush again. That's part of why teens become the toddlers of adulthood, because they actually have some amount of, it's not really reversion, but the brain is doing so much work in restructuring that they actually go back to being very based in the lower part of the brain, which is so interesting.
It's also called the reptilian brain because it's just that part that responds to stimuli. And we have a joke in our house that is like, don't poke the lizard. So when she's in reptilian brain mode, like you back up, that's not a time to reason, you comfort and calm until the upper brain is engaged again, and then you can have a conversation.
I love that. Don't poke the lizard. Even in me, don't poke the lizard. When I right? The upstairs brain is not fully mature until the 20s. She said that. And children are more prone to becoming trapped downstairs, flying off the handle, making poor decisions, lack of empathy, lack of self-understanding when they're trapped downstairs. So we want to also make sure that our expectations are developmentally appropriate, right? That's another piece of what we're navigating. And then just quickly about the amygdala, and we're not going to go into this too deeply, but the job of the amygdala is really to process and express emotions, and especially anger and fear. And it can hijack the upstairs brain. So if the amygdala gets engaged, the upstairs brain really loses its power unless you're pretty advanced and aware. And I mean, I don't know about you all, but I still have moments of getting triggered where I don't feel like I have that much control. And that's really the amygdala taking over, and then we have to clear the pathway before attempting to engage the upstairs brain.
And that's important, right? Because that's the part of you that like shoots your arm out to protect the passenger. You know, when you're stopping short in the car, like you don't even think about it, you just act. And so it's a survival instinct and it serves a purpose, but it also, you know, it happens before that upper brain gets engaged. And that's much more common in our younger children. It's just the path is blocked. So that's where they need the skills.
Yep. I love that. Thank you, Margaret. And then we have attunement. And this is so interesting because we've been saying for years, and Dr. Montessori really acknowledged connection before correction, but we never understood why. And now we know that when really attunement, that the reason logic doesn't work and you cannot negotiate with, like we used to say in our house long before I knew about this, we don't negotiate with terrorists. But part of what we were saying about our child is when they were in that space, we weren't going to negotiate with them, but it also made sense because it wasn't going to work, right? Like they're not in a logical state of mind. And so we needed to go in and really engage the right hemisphere of the brain, or really the bottom of the brain, and offer that connection so that they could then be able to engage in a meaningful way. We're going to skip this next self-reflection so we can get into some of the what parents can do, and then we'll have a one later. So we always want to start with why, and know that your child, they need to know why you're working with them on this. Once they start to be 3 or 4, you can say to them, it's their self-construction, and you let them know that your job is supporting them in building them to be a great world citizen, to be resilient, to be and to be really know themselves. I find that goes so far with every child I've ever worked with as a teacher and as a parent. My girls know as children in my house that there is not one thing that I am doing that is not about their self-construction and who they're going to end up being. And it helps because when I'm, for example, with my 16-year-old, when we said, look, we've got to put a limit on your screen time, we can't allow, and now she has like no access to any kind of Netflix or TikTok or any of those things. She knew that was for her self-construction as a human being, because we're so in the conversation. So we really find that that's really important, because, and that's a part of engaging that left brain. So of course, you're not going to do this when they're upset, but that's a part of engaging that left brain in the conversation so that they know it's a part of their self-construction. We also want to create teachable moments. So we want to turn surviving moments into teachable moments. And one of the things that I need to say, this is one of my soapboxes of things, but it's really not important where you take your child for vacation. They never need to go to Disneyland. They do not need to go to Hershey Park. All of those pieces are not important. What's important is how we deal with them on a day-to-day basis. Not that we don't want to spend time with them on in a less stressful setting, but it's really about supporting the breakdowns of life and not expecting that there be no breakdowns. Of course, they're going to have breakdowns. They're human beings. Of course, we're going to have breakdowns. We're human beings. And I love this Louisa May Alcott quote of, I'm not afraid of the storms, for I'm learning to sail my ship. And I will share with you that as soon as I took hand in hand parenting, I realized that I was no longer worried about my children having breakdowns. I wasn't trying to avoid them. I learned that that was a great opportunity for them. So rather than sheltering our children from life's inevitable difficulties and being that lawnmower parent that goes out in front of them, make sure everything's flat, that does not support them. That does not build them. We want to help them integrate the challenges into their understanding of the world and really learn from them, right? We want them to be able to take their breakdowns and learn and engage the brain, right? So that's a piece of what we can do. We also connection first, we've talked about this, but one of the things to just think about is that your stress is their stress. So when you are stressed out, they will be stressed out. Like that is just how it is. I wish it was different. I would love that because, you know, I'm running a school during a pandemic. Wouldn't it be great if I didn't also carry that responsibility? But it is what it is. And so we have to always remember that. And even when we're stressed, that we need to be offering that connection. During defiance, we want to bring them in closer. If your child is being defiant, I remember reading an article on this many years ago. I wish I'd saved it, but it changed my approach when just so you know, my daughter, Georgie, the children, she's been out sick the last couple of days. It's not COVID. And she said, the children in the classroom said, you know, when Georgie's not there, the classroom's a lot quieter. So I want you to know that I have a big personality little human who lives with me. And I remember when she was probably 2 or 3, she was so defiant. And I read this article that said, if your child's defiant, and I was, you know, I hadn't done hand in hand, I didn't have that information. And I was still using like negotiating with her. I was, you know, trying to talk her into doing the right thing. I didn't have any of this information. And I read, if your child is defiant, it is a lack of connection with you, and bring them in closer. And I started doing that, and her defiance shifted immediately. It really was amazing how much of her defiance was coming out of the lack of connection with me. It's usually defiance is them asking for help with their emotions. They're feeling disconnected, and think about how you would like to be treated if you were upset. That really helps me. And then we always say connect and redirect, but I want you to think about this, and this is straight out of the Whole Brain Child. I love these little images, they help us. But when a child is upset, their left brain is unavailable, just like us, right? That's why, thank goodness my husband's learned this, but when he used to try to come in with a solution and try to fix it, I would just be so frustrated, right? Now he knows to just say, that stinks. That's his whole job, right? But so when the child is upset, just like us, the left brain is unavailable. So we acknowledge their feelings. We use nonverbal signals like touch. We talked about that. And we use our right brain to connect with the child's right brain, which is attunement. And that helps bring the child's brain into balance. And then they can be receptive to logic, right? It's only when we get that right brain engaged that they can be receptive to logic. And you can now have a logical discussion and discipline. It's going to be much more effective. You can think about yourself as a lifeguard who swims out to put your arms around the child and helps like get them to shore before you're going to tell them not to swim out so far in the surf. You're going to get them to safety first, and then you have the conversation. I do not want anyone to hear that in Montessori we're permissive. That is not what's happening. We are not, I will tell you, we don't step over anything. We're educating, we're not stepping over it. And I want you to know that we can't help them until we get them to shore. So, and I love this little image. I know you all are not, most of you are not dealing with homework, but it's just such a good example of how to support them. Allowing for discomfort. So instead of coming in again to fix it, which we just talked about a little bit with my poor husband. We have to, if you knew how often I refer to him. But we say, instead of don't cry, it's okay, kind of dismissing that, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to tell what happened and also acknowledge that they're safe. Okay. And so, but we also don't want to fix it for them. Like, having our children not have big emotions doesn't serve them. They've got to be able to have emotions, and we're not, kind of frosting over them. And then we name it to tame it. Oh, sorry, I skipped that. Name it to tame it. We want to give them space to tell it and retell it and then retell it and listen to the story, right? I have to tell you, I had an experience when I was 17 years old of getting lost in the woods, and it was really, really scary for me, and it was really, really scary for my family. And I remember, they found me at like 3:00 in the woods, and it was in the woods of Mexico, and it was, on this volcano, and it was scary. And I came back and I went to sleep, and the next day I wanted to keep talking about it. And my folks, they were done. I was safe. They glad you're home, and I still remember having that experience. And I was old enough to really recognize that I still needed to tell the story and specifically talk about the safety, right? I wanted to reinforce that. I needed to reinforce that for myself. And so if they have something that comes up that's traumatic, we want to give them the opportunity to talk about it over and over and over until they feel like it's handled. And that's engaging that right part of the brain. You're going to help them sequence it, and you're going to reinforce their safety. I want to give you this slide. I love this little image on this. Oh, and I also naming it to taming it, right? Like, so often if there's a feeling that they're having and they can't name it, they can't own it. You can't, but if you can, I was just doing this with my oldest daughter the other day, where she's like so frustrated, but it was beyond frustrated. And I was trying to help her identify the word. And as soon as she came up with the word for it, she was able to, really address the feeling differently. And so that's a piece of really helping them to name that feeling. Piece of retelling the story, you always want to underscore their safety. So if they've, scraped their knee, or we were talking about this last night. My oldest daughter got lost when she was 7 at the science center. She walked away from my in-laws, and they were frantic, and she's told that story many years. And last night I had her tell the story, and I reinforced her safety because she was still carrying that piece. And she's like, wow, I really feel better. Right. But I didn't know to do that at the time, that she needed to process it and know what happened and put those puzzle pieces together and then reinforce that safety. So, and then engage, don't enrage. So when they're frustrated, and this is hand in hand too, and I know some people really have a hard time thinking like, I had Georgie one time telling me I was the worst mother in the world, and all of these things, but really being able to be in our own, we all really have to have our own prefrontal cortex engaged, so we can say, it's okay to feel that way, and help them process that and understand it themselves. Because here's the bottom line: children do well if they can. If you've come to my other talks, we talk about that a lot. We do it a lot in the the session on parenting. Children do well if they can, so we have to give them the support they need. Okay, use it or lose it. So we want to support their sound decision making, and children need practice making decisions. If we're always making decisions for them, they don't have an opportunity to practice that skill. So we've got to help them control the emotions and their body, and have opportunities to do that. we need to help them build self-understanding by asking questions. Telling them how they feel does not help. Think about when somebody tells you how you feel, right? You can ask, are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling annoyed? And then let them answer, right? We want to invite the child to even write in a journal or draw pictures of how they're feeling to help them connect to that. We want to have empathy and really support them in understanding how other people would feel, right? And then morality, practicing morality is offering hypothetical situations, like asking questions like, what would you do? And then we can even model it for them, right? And I only have, I think, a couple more slides here, and then we'll stop and talk about all this. So I'm a little worried to stop sharing my screen, but I'm gonna be brave here. And so, and then move it or lose it. And I love this one. Children, when they move, which is why a Montessori classroom is so beautiful, like it's a part of it is they're not having to sit all day. They get up, they move around. If they're agitated or frustrated, they can move, but helping our children move when they're caught in that space will help them integrate their brain. And that's a big piece for them, right? That's a really big piece for them. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share so we can talk about all that. And then I'm going to go into some other tools, but I want to give you all a chance to that was a lot of information. A lot of it's new. Even I hadn't done upstairs, downstairs brain before. And I want to see kind of what you're thinking. What are your questions? Maybe we can think about it together.
It all makes like perfect sense. And I'm just like, when this happens, it works. And I've seen it work. And I think the hardest part is just being, as a parent, being in the right mindset of like not moving on to the next task or being so focused on what's happening or like what needs to get done and focusing on the connection and the teachable. It's just like that's the part that I'm just like, this would all work if I could get my mind to be in the right place. But it's, I guess that's the part where I'm like, I can't do that first. I mean, if I don't do that, then the rest of it doesn't work. So how do I get there more often, I should say?
No, I think that's a great, Anna, that's so honest and so vulnerable, because the truth is when we're flying around and doing all those things, and that's one of the questions that I've been asking myself a lot lately is, what are the strategies that I need to be doing so that I am emotionally available to my children when I'm with them, right? And part of it means I can't, and here I am telling you all this as the parents of my school, but I can't leave everything on the court every day at school. I have to keep some of my, energy, some of my well-being. Like I can't be, how children, they come home and they get to the mom and they kind of fall apart, and that's the safe place for them to do that. I can't keep it all together till I get home and then fall apart. I've got to, I have to maintain some of that ability for myself, and I have to meditate, and I have to keep new parenting information coming in all the time. I have to get good exercise. I have to eat well, and I have to get enough sleep. If I can get those things, I'm a great mom, right? Like I'm a great mom. Not always, but most of the time I can pull it out. Like even if I lose my temper, I'm really good about saying, I'm so sorry, that was awful. I don't want to ever talk to you like that. Please, I never use an excuse, but you just did that. Like I'm really good about like really owning that. I want them to know how to do that. But when I'm not doing those things for myself, I don't stand a chance. And they don't stand a chance. So it really, and actually in hand, they talk about this a lot, that our first responsibility is our self-care because of that. Like how we show up really does matter. It's not selfish. It's actually for the whole family as a community. So I love that, Anna. Okay, Dina, you're next. Oh, Dina, and then Stephanie, and then you, Margaret.
Yeah, I was also going to make the connection between hand in hand and what you're talking about here. So I'm also taking hand in hand, and a lot of what we just saw is what you learn in hand, what you talk about. And, you know, even if you're not perfect on a day-to-day basis, just, you know, hearing these types of things and learning about it helps you kind of look back and recognize missed opportunities. And even, you know, as you're going through it and you miss an opportunity, you're like, oh, I missed an opportunity there. You know, next time I'm going to be more aware of this and do it differently next time. And it also talks about like self-care, because when you're drained and you just don't have it in you, you don't have the patience, you don't have the energy, you know, it's hard. It just makes it that much more hard. It just makes it that much harder. So taking care of yourself, I agree. Yeah. All the same things. Get outside. We need healthy food. We need nature. We need all the same things they do.
All the same things, right? All the same things. And really, you know, the dishes can sit for a little bit. Like that's, you know, anyway, that's my whole thing. Stephanie, you were next.
Well, I was actually going to say a lot of what Anna said, so I don't really have as much to say anymore. She kind of got right where I was. Like this all, like, it makes so much sense, but then like being in the moment and actually implementing it is so hard. And so, you know, I've been really practicing with Cora. She cries all the time, like just, and she's doing it at school too. And she has her person at school and they're dealing with it like perfectly. But I would be like, just stop crying. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, I'm so sorry that you're crying. I really want to help you stop crying. What can I do to help you? And we kind of like talk through it. So I kind of just need to get in that same place with the tantrums and the other things that she does. But yeah.
Yeah. And in hand, one of the beautiful tools is just to, oh gosh, now I'm losing the language. You can help Dina with this is, basically you just
stay listening.
It's stay listening. Are you in it too, Anna, right now?
I'm in it too.
Isn't it so good? I love it so much. I love it so much. But you stay listen and you just
works.
It does work, right? You just sit and you don't have to solve it for them. You say, I am so sorry you're so upset. I'm here with you. And you just are with them.
I want to do a plug for No Drama Discipline because the whole brain child, I remember reading and thinking, oh, I love this. This makes so much sense. And yet it wasn't enough for me to have enough tools. And I like No Drama Discipline because it's very specific. Okay, in this situation, do this, try saying this. So if you're liking the approach, then No Drama Discipline is great. And both books have a little cheat sheet that you can, at the back of the book, you can print it out and tape it on your refrigerator, which is what I do for that whole, it's so hard in the moment thing. Look at the fridge. You know, I even rewrote some of the things bigger, like on different colors. So I could look at it when I'm in the heat of the moment and remember what I want to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, love that. All right, I do want to give you all a few more pieces before we wrap up today. I know so I'm going to go back. How's my share? Okay, good. All right, so we're going to talk about growth versus fixed mindset. This is a big piece of Montessori, okay? It is the concept that failure is an opportunity for us to grow, and rather than failure is a limit of my abilities. So one of the pieces we do, and I'm going to go over some of the ways we do this. There we go. Some of the ways we do this in Montessori, but we always encourage a child to do for themselves. And Dr. Montessori tells us to never do for a child what he feels like he can do for himself. That's a really big piece. If they're asking for help with something that they already know how to do, they're requesting a connection with you. Otherwise, your really job is to get out of their way and do the minimum you can so that they can feel successful. And then if you need to build a skill, and we are going to take a little time to do this today, you're going to give a lesson, right? Rather than, and I have to tell you, I still use this And I'll say to, if there's something that my children are struggling with, I'll ask them if they would like a lesson on it. But oftentimes, if there's a skill they need to build, you can give them a lesson. And I want to show you kind of what a lesson I have. I got one that would be easy visual for you on Zoom. So you would say to your child, and this is for younger children more, where you're not going to talk during the lesson. Once they are over age 5, you can talk to them more during the lesson, and it doesn't disrupt them. But when they're under 5, they can't actually manage you talking to them and learning the skill at the same time. So you're going to say, you always want to invite them, and you're going to say, I'm going to give you a lesson on how to blow your nose. I'll have a turn, and then you'll have a turn. You want to make sure you name it. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to cut carrots. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to wash a pan. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to wipe yourself. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to wait patiently for me to get off the phone before talking to me. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to hang up your backpack. So it's a really nice way, rather than coming in and being like, why don't you? We assume that they don't have that skill built yet, right? And then the truth is, if you've given the lesson and you've built the skill, then you can say, I notice, that's a little bit later. But so you're going to say, I'm going to show you how to blow your nose. I'll have a turn, and then you'll have a turn. Those of you who have very young children, I would recommend doing it very slowly and practicing whatever you're going to teach them ahead of time, because it's amazing how many things we don't actually think about that we do unconsciously. So you're going to use, it's called a point of interest. So you want to show them where you want them to be looking. Okay. So if I were giving this lesson to a 3-year-old, I'd say, I've noticed that your nose has been running. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to blow your nose so that you can blow it by yourself. I'll have a turn, and then you have a turn. Now, notice I'm talking about it like I'm going to give them the secrets to the universe, right? Like, I'm so excited it's not like I'm going to give you a lesson on that. It's an ice cream sundae. I'm going to give you a lesson on how to blow your nose. I'll have a turn, and then you'll have a turn. And then I show, right? And then you do go like this, because you're showing how proud you are of yourself that you just did that, right? You're going to, right? So it's really nice to use eye contacts between the steps. And then you say, now it's your turn. And anytime your nose is running, you can practice. Right? And then you watch them as they do it. Do not correct them in the middle, right? They may do it wrong 6 times. If you need to represent the lesson. But if you come in while they're doing it, you say, you're taking 6 tissues or whatever it is, it's going to disrupt their concentration and also their really wanting to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. I hope that's helpful. All right. And I was going to have you practice, but you're going to have to practice later because we're short on time. Allow them to think and speak for themselves. This is really important. If your child is, if you're ordering at a restaurant, if they're at the playground, somebody asks them their name, you want to give them an opportunity to respond. If they don't respond after 6 or 7 seconds, you can say, oh, this is Georgie, but really giving them the opportunity to answer for themselves and not answering for them, and giving them time to think. Children are, with their brains, there's so much going on in there. We think so much faster than they do because the neural pathways are really, there's so much happening in their brain. So giving them an opportunity to think for themselves, even at the playground. This is a great example. I cannot tell you how frustrated I get sitting at the playground and watching parents tell their children what they're going to do next at the playground. Really, it is their time, right? So could they not choose to go to the swings next? Could they not choose how much time they're going to spend on the slide? Can they not choose if they just want to play in the mulch? Those are all okay. So giving them those opportunities as much as possible, just in life, is really supports their thinking and their sense of themselves. Providing worthy challenges. They can do hard things. I love using this language with children. You can do hard things. It's the way to build self-esteem is actually through overcoming challenges. So when they're struggling and they come to you and they're not sure if it's okay to struggle, it's okay to tell them it's okay for it to be hard, and they can do hard things, and they will internalize that and really own that. Provide opportunities for them to fail. If you sweep in all the time, swoop in and sweep in, and fix it for them or make it done for them, and they never have the opportunity to come to school without, we had a conversation last time, coming to school in pajamas. That's a great example of, if they're not dressed, it's okay for them to come to school in pajamas. It's not about being embarrassed. I had a child come to school in pajamas almost a whole year. Like, that's okay. It's okay for them to drop something, to fall. We call it, actually, I'm switching my language around this, but friendliness with error. It's also showing, what do you do when something goes wrong? How do you respond? I knew I was in trouble when Georgie turned 2, and she got out of the car and she dropped something and she said, damn it. I was like, Georgie, where'd you learn that? She said, that's what you say. It's like, oh, great. Like, right? So I had demonstrated what happens when something goes wrong, was that you say, damn it, right? So that doesn't work, and so giving them the opportunity to really have that experience of failing and being friendly with their errors. If your child has an area that they're nervous or scared, one of the greatest gifts you can give them is to help them hug what we call hug your monster. So learn how to do the thing they're afraid of. That is such a gift for them, because and there's Daniel Siegel has a great excellent talk that is about this. He's working with a parent of somebody who's really shy about going to the pool and swimming, but it's really supporting them and building the skills to do the things they fear, so that they're not controlled by their fear long term, right? And supporting them in that. And that means, okay, let's just circle back. That means getting in touch with the right brain, right, and the emotions, and then helping them tap into what it is that has them be afraid, and helping them move into the left brain, and the sequencing of helping them build the muscle gradually, and not, it's not like throwing them into the deep end, right? So we want to remember that for our children and us as well, success breeds motivation, and it's one little step and then one little step. They don't have to do everything in a big step. Let's celebrate with them those small pieces and really their small successes, and break it down into bite sizes. When we have a child who doesn't want to do something at all, helping them left brain, helping them be able to identify one step that they could take and feel good about, actually supports them in wanting to do more and more and more. Just like us, it's the same, it's habit building. Teaching, giving, and receiving feedback. One of the things I really recommend, and then we'll wrap up. But one of the things I really recommend is teaching children how to, first of all, use non-judgmental language when giving feedback. So I notice and I wonder. Those are really helpful. I notice all the towels are on the ground, the floor in the bathroom, right? I notice that your shoes are left in the doorway. And it's a beautiful way to say it because it doesn't have any judgment attached to it. And then I wonder how quickly you might be able to get this, get the dishwasher emptied, or playing with those kind of as well. And then telling stories of getting and giving feedback where you get to show your vulnerability and your, friendliness with error. A lot of times I tell stories in the house to my husband because the brain activates differently when it's to someone else rather than to the person you're directing it to. So I tell him a story that I want one of my daughters to hear about something I know they're working on, and so that they have the mirror neurons in the brain can engage. And so what ends up happening is they'll refer back to it. I will tell you, I used to make up stories, and then I even told parents to do that. And I have to tell you that one of the things that happened is that my daughters would start referring back to them and I didn't remember. And so don't do that. Find real life examples and so that they can really learn to build those pieces. So, okay. Oh, I have to do this one. Emphasis on effort, not intelligence. I think everybody knows that now, but if you focus on the child's intelligence and you tell them they're smart all the time, that is a surefire way for them to be a fixed mindset person, because they don't want anybody to ever hear that they're not smart. And they don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to acknowledge that. And then the last piece, and I really will wrap up, is praise versus encouragement. In Montessori, we encourage, but we don't praise. So I'd love to have everybody in our community, good job, out of there. Just take it out of your vocabulary completely. The reason we don't praise is because it makes it about us. It takes whatever the child's doing and focuses their attention on us as the adult and receiving external praise. And what ends up happening is then they see it being something that they're doing for themselves and because they feel good about it. And in Montessori, we're really about teaching them to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and about their own spirit and knowing themselves. That does not mean if your child's excited about something that you can't say to them, I see you did that all by yourself, or I noticed that you worked on that for 3 hours. What you're doing is you're focusing on, you're saying what you see, which takes a lot more consciousness than good job, right? My girls used to come up to me with a drawing that they drew that took them 3 seconds, and it wasn't a very good drawing. And they'd say, look what I did, Mom. And I'd say, you used a lot of purple. Do you want to tell me about that? And then they could tell me the story of the wind and how there's trees, and which is very different than, oh, good job, which actually closes down the conversation, right? You can also say to them, if they're really excited about something, like, look at what I did, Mom. Oh my goodness. Tell me what you love about that. Tell me what you're proud of about that. Tell me what you want me to focus on here, right? I love those questions, and it puts it back on them so that they can actually own and really feel the pride of whatever it is that they're doing, rather than me coming in externally and saying, and I still I have a daughter who is a visual artist. Now, the other piece I have to say within this framework is I also don't believe that you should always give your children only positive feedback. I think it's really important that the feedback that they get on things that they do include critique. Otherwise, I can't even tell you, I hire a lot of young people, and they come in, and the first time they're given any critical feedback, they are a mess, because no one has ever said to them before, it's that fixed mindset. And so one of the things, if you're building a growth mindset child, you're going to talk to them about critique being a part of how they grow, and that we can only grow if we get the feedback that allows us to grow. So I really recommend these three. I haven't read The Magical yet, but Margaret did, and she says it's wonderful. And Your Fantastic Elastic Brain, it's got some weird little creatures in it, but overall it's really good. And it's by the woman who wrote Raising Courageous Daughters, which is all about the brain and how to work with girls, particularly who don't have testosterone, on overcoming challenges. And then here's the other, these are the other resources. We talk about the Escaping Endless Adolescence, The Whole Brain Child. If you haven't read No Drama Discipline, I really, really recommend that. I second Margaret. And The Big Disconnect is really good. It's about actually what happens to our brains with electronics, both our brains and the children. So I want to give you those. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thanks for being here. It was a pleasure spending the morning with you this beautiful Friday morning, and we will see you soon.